So I'll give you this preface. So I'm making like a documentary. It's for my class, so it's not like anything legit.
Mhm.
But it's about kind of our family and how our views of the LGBTQ community have been passed down. Because it's just something we've talked about in this class a whole bunch about how your parents' views and how like where you grew up, how it can change your views. So I wanted to get your view because you're the youngest person I know that is active in, kind of supporting people and fighting for these rights and stuff like that. So I want to get your opinion. Start off with this. What is your definition of the LGBTQIA community?
Those that would traditionally be called that practice a non-traditional lifestyle. What would be called a traditional lifestyle? I would use a general term in that someone that is gay would be, I think they may fall under different categories, but someone that's gay.
My definition, probably a community of people that don't fit a heterosexual definition that society has, whether it's how they identify sexually or who they may be attracted to. So it's a community of those like-minded people.
I don't think there's like a direct definition of it. I think it's just you being your own person and accepting who you are. I never knew what I meant, and I don't think I ever will like fully know because there's like so many different sexualities and genders and gender identities.
Do you know what your parents' views were on LGBTQ community, or maybe how they
No,
would define them?
no, because it was not as open.
Yeah.
So I never remember my parents saying one way or the other because it just wasn't that. I'm going to say it was not as common, but it's the knowledge wasn't as common. I'm not saying that that it's more prevalent now than it was when I was a kid or growing up. It's a little more open now.
Was wrong.
Okay.
And I don't know necessarily. I don't know that it was in my household. It wasn't discussed, like it wasn't a topic of conversation. If it ever did come up, it was morally wrong. It was considered a sin, but that was also the society that they grew up in an even more at a time where it was just not even a thing.
Do you know our parents' views on the community?
I think they view it as a normal thing, like because like so many people. Because I know mom's friend, she's gay, and I know that Uncle T was transgender. So I think after it's been in our family that they know that it's normal and it's not something that's a sin or anything bad.
I'm trying to think back. You didn't see, like, you would have people that were like ladies that lived together, even as a kid, because it wasn't, you weren't exposed, you didn't have that knowledge, you didn't think anything different of it. Mm-hmm. They were just two ladies that lived together. When, in hindsight, now obviously they were a couple, right? But when you're even at 15 years old, you don't even realize they're a couple because it's not something that you even noticed. It's not something that it wouldn't even register your mind one way or the other.
I played sports all through school and played softball and all that stuff. So there was always this sort of, assumption that any girl that played sports or that was good at it was considered, oh, she's probably a lesbian or, stuff like that. I'm like, so I think, there's stereotypes and some are fair.
But the fact that, like, one of the things that's surprising now, I think, is that there's such a drive for acceptance, but overall in my life they were always accepted, and even in the South with parents that were non-religious, but still would heard them say the N-word, you know what I mean? And I don't think that they would have been as tolerant, just based on growing up with them. I don't think they would have been as tolerant. But it was really something that was accepted, that you knew. It just wasn't out in the open, because they still had to live. They were still repercussions, and maybe that's why they weren't in the open, because there were repercussions if they came out. But like, I can't remember the first time I heard the word lesbian, but you heard like the derogatory words of, you would hear words, faggot, things like that, but you never heard it about females, you know, and that was a pretty common word.
Yeah.
It was a pretty common word.
Just like last week, these kids were like mocking me, and because like everyone at my school knows, but these kids were like mocking me, and then they called me the slur.
And like if you were playing sports, or if you were or someone wasn't performing really well, that was the word they used for it. It wasn't like, it was like what the phrase I use is like, you're a wussy, right? And that was, but it was, they would use the other word.
So like I was talking about like how bad like the sport is, or like sports are at our school, because no one can never win a game. And he's on the baseball team, and well, he was like, well, at least I'm not, you know, that.
You know, it was pretty common.
I don't know, it was either middle school or maybe I was a freshman, that there was a guy at my school who was openly gay. And that just, and I remember just it being sort of like somebody that you gawk at. His name was Trevor. He was an African-American guy, but he was super like flamboyant. So he checked all the boxes for, you know, what you thought flaming homosexual would be. And so I think I can remember him, but only because it was something that was so different.
So we were Easter Christians. You know what I mean? So, and you don't know this about me. So my very best friend growing up, King Cleary, was gay, and I knew he was gay. Okay, so I purposely didn't use those words. So his brother Tony, like a manly man kind of guy, right? But Tony understood Ken also. Ken died of AIDS. So he died of AIDS back in '89. And but he was my best friend growing up, rode to school together, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, sometimes I think that society now thinks, and especially people your age, you think that, man, we were growing up, it was just really super oppressive. And no, I'm a straight man saying that it wasn't. Okay, it probably, if I was gay, it probably would be, yeah, it probably was oppressive. You know what I mean? Because you're looking at it from my view. You know, so I understand that that's a different view than someone who is gay who had lived during that time. My friends, when I was in the Air Force, my friends in Germany. So John and I were really good friends. We're roommates. The Air Force has put us together. You know, and we were roommates, and we had a couple friends that we knew were gay, and at the time you got kicked out. So, and they were a little bit ostracized from everyone else, and this was when I was living in Germany. And we would take trips, and those guys would come with us.
Yeah.
It allowed them, like I remember going to Paris, it allowed them to be who they wanted to be. And, but John and I were not homosexual. We always had girlfriends. But we recognized that those guys were different, and we gave them an opportunity to be who they wanted to be.
How do you think the people in our family that are Christian get past the stereotype that Christians hate gay people?
It's not really something to get past as much as it is to just realize that, you know, like there's nothing bad about it. Gay people exist. You can't just ignore it your whole life.
If you are a Christian, you believe in the power of the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit has the ability to touch anyone and call them into ministry. So if you are putting the Holy Spirit and saying the Holy Spirit is not strong enough to pull someone who is gay or bi or whatever into ministry, you're completely missing the point.
My beliefs are no better than anyone else's beliefs. If someone wanted to worship a telephone pole and it gets them to where they need to be, good for them. Yeah. Right? I choose to worship Jesus, and that gets me where I need to be. I don't think that I can be as arrogant enough to think that what I believe is right.
Yeah.
but I know what I believe is right for me.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean it's right for anyone else, but I know that it brings me peace and it brings me joy, and that's all that really matters.
But I think as I got older and it became more of a thing where you met more people, you got out of your own little bubble, and you experienced more from different kinds of people, different ways of thinking. I think sometimes people see it as something they should fear. And it's just because they don't know, they don't understand, or they don't they don't have anybody close to them that's been through it. Honestly, some of the best, most understanding people that I've ever been with in ministry are gay.
What is your opinion on the phrase, love the person, hate the sin?
I think that's really good lip service. Sounds good. It sounds more accepting. I don't know that that's really a thing though. Because I think it's almost like we categorize this as a sin more than we do, say, someone who steals or lies or whatever. And it's really, it's the same thing. I don't know. I don't like the phrase.
A sin is more of an action that someone does, but it doesn't reflect who someone is. Their personality does. And so a sin is more of, like I said, like an action, and the person could be much more than that.
I do understand the argument from both sides. I tend to lean more towards if a person is struggling, why in the world would we build a higher wall? Why would we not say, let's do this walk together? I may not agree with your lifestyle, and maybe that has to do with love the person, hate the sin. But I think that we have to figure out, is it a sin?
I don't know if society can accept how other people live. And sometimes you see people that I believe that are not secure in themselves, so they take it out on other people. Listen, I think it's perfectly fine for someone to say that I don't support the LGBTQ community. That's fine. You have the right not to. It's fine. If that's what makes you happy, good for you. As long as you don't act upon it illegally. We have some rules, some laws that make sure that they don't violate laws based on those things. But that's fine. They can believe that. It's not my job to change their mind. I believe this generation feels like they're the only ones that have ever been passionate about anything. For me, it's church and Jesus, and my kids and my wife and my friends and my work. I get a lot of joy from my work, and but they are searching for peace, and I don't think they realize that it's perfectly fine you want to protest because there's no social justice. Well, there's never going to be social justice. Since the beginning of time, there's not been social justice. And that's just never going to happen because we don't live in a world full of perfect people. So that's never going to happen. We're always going to have poor. We're always going to have those that are oppressed. And the person that I believe in the book that I believe in, addresses those things. Eventually, over time, they're going to find something that brings them peace. And they have to make sure that when they do find that thing, that they don't enforce it on other people. They don't force it upon other people. And that the LGBTQ community, or not the community, some of the drive from it can become a religion. Yet they're some of the people that don't like religion. They don't realize that, and you see it really big with environmentalists. It's becoming a religion for a lot of those folks. And they are becoming just like the people that they say sit in church pews with their ties and their hats on and their bouffant hairstyle, who have the stiff upper lip, and by God, you don't believe what I believe, so you're less than me. Well, that's the same thing some of these other people believe.
If they're not hurting anybody and they're making themselves happy, then who am I to have anything to say about it?